People continually say, I can't draw a straight line. I don't have the talent, Bob, to do what you're doing. That's baloney. Talent is a pursued interest. In other words, anything that you're willing to practice, you can do. And this is no exception.
Hey gang, welcome to the How to Actually Play series, where I try to teach you what you need to know about playing every single Warframe in the game. Don't forget to like and sub, leave a comment if you have questions or feedback. I'm more than happy to help. And if you have things you like, dislike, you gotta let me know so I can improve my content. Today we're talking about Follie, the most recent addition to the game, and I'm pretty excited. This one's pretty unique. This video is broken into several chapters and time-stamped for your convenience. These chapters consist of initial thoughts and acquisition of the Warframe, full ability breakdown that is quite detailed and rigorous, HELMINTH options, what Warframe options work for this frame, what ability they give to other frames, build synergies, which is like loadouts, how the builds work, try to provide multiple builds, what mods, quality of life, all that good stuff, mechanical execution / gameplay, which is what to do once you actually get into the mission, and then a little summary bit at the end to kind of wrap up if there's anything I missed, small details, so on and so forth. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Love you lots. Let's get into it. Starting with acquisition and thoughts, Follie is acquired by playing the Follie's Hunt game mode on the Broken Vesper Relay node on Venus, post Chains of Harrow quest completion. Admittedly, her drop rates are pretty bad, and her farm is quite horrendous from a statistical point of view. I admittedly got incredibly lucky myself in farming her, and personally, for her HELMINTH ability, I'm just going to buy a new copy with Platinum, if that gives you some sort of frame of reference. With that being said, however, Follie is a disgustingly strong Warframe. Like, it's not, oh, with really high investment, she's super good, which is like every frame in the game. I genuinely think outside of like some minor survivability issues, which really don't exist once you build even remotely good, Follie is outright one of the strongest frames in the game in terms of raw output. Speaking of Follie and outputting raw, her kit is super interesting to play and quite versatile, but her strength is the exact problem I'm kind of having with Warframe right now. A lot of the newer Warframes feel like they have no real role, they kind of do everything, and it kind of rules out any need for team play ever. And I'm not saying that's strictly a bad thing by any means, but I do really think that raid / team oriented content is one of the things that Warframe really needs to like exponentially succeed, and something like Follie draws us, no pun intended, further away from that. However, in this case, I can absolutely forgive it. The uniqueness of Follie's kit compensates for it entirely. As personally, like, I like how much they invested into her kit and making it function, the SHADOWGRAPH, the painting the abilities, all that cool stuff. I would prefer that she's much more on the strong side with the kind of like extra development time they put into her. I just hope it doesn't go this way with more future frames that are more simple. This level of strength is kind of ridiculous. Follie's passive is Ink Blot. Follie's abilities coat enemies in ink, inflicting a slow, with inked enemies having a 20% chance to drop energy and health orbs on death. This lasts quite a good amount of time, and usually the enemy will be ink blotted until they perish. This can generate lots of energy through equilibrium purple shards, and the slow is a fairly intense 50%. It applies very easily, synergizes with her Low Surge SHADOWGRAPH painting in terms of the orbs, and higher enemy densities basically solves your energy economy in one stroke. Again, no pun intended on that one. Essentially, Follie's energy econ is so clean. She has very low costs, and it's going to be super easy to maintain her energy econ with just Inkblot and maybe like an energy nexus if you really wanted to. But really, especially in Steel Path enemy density, Inkblot is able to maintain your energy economy as long as you're playing remotely decently. Follie's first ability is Forced Perspective. Follie dives into the ground, cleansing status effects and gaining invulnerability for a brief but respectable period. Follie then emerges from where she was aiming at the end of the dive, dealing that damage and stagger, again inking enemies in the radius at the end point. Follie can pop out of most surfaces, like so, but it's a little bit fidgety. There's a lot to get used to here, but you'll just have to spam cast it sometimes. I would recommend casting speed shards. I think it gets so much better, and you can get some wrathful advanced levels of movement that way. Also note that you can pop out of ceilings, and also you could pop out of thin air. So Forced Perspective has like a 100-meter fixed range that cannot be adjusted. But if I just cast into the open air like this, I can pop out of surfaces at like lack thereof, right? I can pop out of thin air as it kind of just makes the surface for you like that. And so Forced Perspective really is an insane amount of movement, only really second to Wrathful Advance. It's pretty insane. It's a great panic button, applies your passive easily, and in a case like this where I can put my explosive barrel down, I can also detonate it using the damage like so. Forced Perspective is just an incredibly strong tool, and I really recommend you get some casting speed for it. But for shield gating, just the invulnerability, status cleanse, damage, applying ink blot, all sorts of things, this is just a very complete first ability. I love Forced Perspective. Folie's second ability is SHADOWGRAPH. On hold cast, Follie opens her sketchbook full of drawings of items that the player creates for each SHADOWGRAPH ability. You can see mine here. I've got some creative and less creative options. The select ability then becomes the main cast for tap casting, like so. So I selected the arc trap, it'll shoot out an arc trap, and then if I just tap cast, it'll shoot that back out. It's pretty neat, similar to the mana cord. I'm going to cover every single painting in as much detail as possible. It's going to be a bit of a doozy, so get your snacks or whatever. Also note that each painting will apply ink blot as well when you do the painting, like so. As you can see, these enemies were ink blotted when I put down this explosive barrel. Speaking of explosive barrel, that's the first ability here, and that's going to spawn either a gas, blast, or cold barrel. When the barrel explodes, which can be done using a variety of abilities or weapons, like here I'll just shoot it with the Grimoire, blows up, they all absolutely are removed from this plane of existence. The cold and blast deal upfront insane 65% max health damage, while gas deals only 12.5%, but again, there's a gas DOT that follows that will, spread that damage around. You spawn multiple barrels before detonation, which will basically guarantee the demise of enemies. You can see here with 0 buffs or debuffs on the enemies, if I put down 2 barrels, cold blast, shoot it, they're gone. Right, this is very strong. Roar, viral status, other damage vulnerability, buff sources easily push this ability to one-shot basically anything that it needs to. Explosive Barrel alone is Folie's best ability and honestly feels a bit arguably overtuned in the numbers department. The best options for detonation, other synergies I've found, I've got the Grimoire here, Compressa for like the late explosion, Ogress with Nightwatch Napalm. I'll show the build once we get to the build section, but I've got a lot of multi-shot here and heavy caliber, so it disperses the Nightwatch Napalm as much as possible. And basically what that means is it will immediately detonate it on cast, like so. So you just have a little pocket explosion that instantly blows up and will, in most builds, deal 100% of the enemy's health as damage, which is absolutely absurd. There's also a Helminth option that will allow for auto detonation, but we'll get there when we get there. For Arc Trap, Follie paints an Arc Trap like the ones in Grineer ship missions. The trap deals some base damage plus 2.5 of the enemy's EHP and shields. This is a little complex, but basically meaning enemies that have armor have a proportional increase in damage taken, but only so much as it compensates for the armor that they have. The Arc Trap guarantees electric procs, stunning enemies, and synergizes with Archon Stretch quite well for energy regen, and the trap will expire after 10 hits on the same target, or when the SHADOWGRAPH duration runs out. Each of these paintings does have the same duration. SHADOWGRAPH arc traps sound simple, but their damage actually gets quite complex, usually to your advantage if you play it properly. Essentially, the percent EHP damage that the arc trap deals is determined by the first tick of the arc trap's electricity against the victim. After the first tick, that damage is set in stone for that arc trap. So, if the defenses of an enemy are stripped after the damage of an arc trap, the damage is cemented. You can amplify the damage by very, very large multiples because the enemy now has their armor stripped, but the damage was meant for an armored enemy, right? The same applies in the inverse, which can let you do, less damage. In this case, I can just show you. So I will let the damage set in stone, cast PLEIN, which will then strip the majority of their armor, and they will basically just explode. This can ramp up to like 8, 9, 10x damage pretty quickly, and even though I do think the barrel is outright better, I just think Arc Trap has a fun mechanic going on here. When your competition is the explosive barrel, it's hard to justify using these, but I do cast them occasionally for Archon Stretch triggers. The damage is competent, and they don't require triggering like the barrels do, but usually to optimize damage against armored enemies, you're going to want to recast other abilities to strip defenses. So there's give and take, but I personally just find that casting these occasionally, and then sticking with barrels is the way to go for DPS. Thermion RPG. Follie paints a Thermion RPG. Very good picture here I've chosen. Putting it on the ground for herself or teammates to use. It may seem like a bit of a meme ability, but honestly I find it being used like... The damage is quite competent, and if you're using, again, a buff or debuff build, which you should be on Follie every single time, the damage gets very, 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 very funny. When you play a frame who does as much ability damage as Follie, you find yourself equipping more support, priming, utility weapons. Occasionally, you can run into enemies like Acolytes with a silence, ability immunity, or whatever, status cap, and you just need straight up fundamental damage, and the Thermion RPG provides that in droves. It is incredibly strong, multiple millions of fundamentals right there to any group of enemies. it is just fun to use. I personally cast it every once in a while, especially if I'm giving it to teammates. Give a new player one of these, and I think they'll have a really, really fun time. This is a mostly for fun ability, but also, you know, has some applications that are absolutely valid to shoot for. Alchemy Amphors. So we can see Follie spawns 3 random amphors, random elemental types that can be used as grenades, or in most cases will just be used to speed up alchemy game modes. Now note that these amphors, I believe, scale with level. Like, they are some serious little hand grenades, and similar to the Thermion RPG, you can absolutely... both have a 30-second cooldown, by the way. I totally forgot to mention that. Both Thermion RPG and amphors have a 30-second cooldown. Similar to the Thermion RPG, like, if you're with new players, or you just want to spawn them for fun, I mean, it is really just a quick... oh, my bad. It's pretty quick inputs. Once you play a lot of Foley, you just kind of know where to drag your mouse. Like, spawn these for your teammates, see if they want to pick them up and throw them. Like, you're kind of a weapons dispenser. It's pretty cool. But overall, unless you're, like, LARPing, like you want to use this ability like a support, you don't have to, but it's good in alchemy. It's solid. Otherwise the damage is fine, but just, again, you have barrels, unfortunately, and that's just going to dominate the majority of your kit. The Death Orb. Observe. Foley paints the Death Orb from Auric and tile sets. The Death Orb was definitely one of the, like, really caught players' attention when Foley was first being teased, but ultimately it's just, like, pretty alright, as we can see here. It's mostly useful for the radiation. It's 15% standard max HP damage, along with that guaranteed radiation status, which is really good for CC. If you're trying to keep your team alive, it's absolutely worth it. Unfortunately, it does not detonate your barrels, which is a mega shame. I really wish it did. That would be a crazy synergy. But it also has that little energy pulse when it spawns that heals or gives 250 energy to prime Warframes, which is like occasionally nice, I guess, if you have teammates or you're starting the mission. The main advantage, again, is the radiation. Keeps enemies off of you and off of your team, off of objectives. Pretty solid. You can place the orb down. It's got your painting duration with a 30-second cooldown, which means you can generally get 100% uptime, play jump rope, whatever. It's a fine enough ability. If you're trying to optimize DPS, you could throw it down, but generally, if you don't want to press a lot of buttons, which is the average Warframe player, you'll never really have to spawn this ability. The Coralizer Armament from Void Armageddon. This slows enemies, and it slows a lot of them. It's got its duration, and you can only have one up at a time, but, like, it will freeze enemies. The slow is intense. Again, it's 1% max health damage, 60% status chance, freezes enemies pretty good, easy to place down, solid range, hits a lot of targets. This, combined with the Death Orb, allows for, like, actually really insane zone control, and it's little to no effort in your spell rotation. I think this is one of the most underrated paintings that Foley has, but overall, again, if you don't want to press a lot of buttons, you absolutely don't have to use this one. Loke Surge. I like got a little slot machine on that one for my painting. Loki paints a single-use Loke Surge from the Zeraman tile sets. When interacted with, it will spawn an Xmas unit to kill, and give one of 6 buffs to all allies within affinity range. 1 buff is not allowed. That's in the usual Loke Surges, and that's like the infinite ammo, increased fire rate. Each buff lasts 45 seconds, and the painting itself has an absurd cooldown of 7 minutes, but some of these buffs are really good and can last the whole mission. The buffs are as follows. Secondaries have guaranteed red crits. Any health orbs picked up grant 25 max health for the rest of the mission. Any energy orbs picked up grant 1 energy per second for the rest of the mission. 1% life leech on all damage and guaranteed slash procs. No energy cost on abilities, plus casting speed, and double affinity gain. Realistically, the main one you want is energy regen. The rest are acceptable, and this is part of an already good ability, which is SHADOWGRAPH. Loke Surge is kind of the potential man of SHADOWGRAPH, in my opinion. It can do a lot on paper, but in most cases, you use it once per mission. It kind of sort of helps for 45 seconds, buffs only longer term missions, or straight up does nothing for you. I wouldn't call it bad, and it's got a lot of situations where it can work. Like, for example, if you're getting a bunch of health, you could do like a Gloom health tank persistence setup. There's all sorts of things you can do with Foley because of this, but in my opinion, it's really like a Kome situation where you're just like playing to scale or it does nothing. But because it's part of an already larger ability being SHADOWGRAPH, I think it's a super fun addition, and it's probably my favorite SHADOWGRAPH painting. Universal ammo. Foley paints a universal ammo. I didn't get very creative with this painting here. Dispenser that dispenses ammo every 5 seconds. This is a really solid one and allows you to usually circumvent a lot of the post-nerf lower ammo weapons. I don't personally use it often. when my Ogress runs out randomly, which is what I use on this weapon, or my Archgun needs some love, I'll use it. It's got a 30-second cooldown, not bad at all, but I don't find myself casting this one very often, but it never hurts, never hurts. Launch pad. Follie paints a launch pad that allows players to jump on it, gain upward momentum and a boost to their double jump. Pretty fine. Enemies can also be sent and ragdolled with it. I'm not sure if these enemies... Oh, there we go. They're on the trampoline. That looked like fun. This is like fine. I think most teammates won't interact with it, but Follie can use forced perspective into it and send herself flying up like this, which is super, super fun. But overall, I really don't cast this ability. But if you want to, you absolutely can. But there's just not much of a point to using this one besides fun. Lost Spirit. Follie paints the Lost Child Spirit from the Zariman tile sets. It will track treasure items similar to the Parallax Chip and Golden Instinct ability. It will hunt down the item and mark it on the map for any player within 50 meters, so you should follow it like semi-closely. It'll be indicated by a little that little blue dot there. Now obviously he's disappearing right away because there is no treasure to find here. And if there is no treasure to find, it'll go on a 5-second cooldown instead of its usual 30-second cooldown. I usually use this to find like random loot goodies. I'll cast it randomly if I feel like there might be something near, or I'll use it to find the new survival security bypasses. I think this is a really solid part of SHADOWGRAPH. I like it a lot. Does it always come in handy? Absolutely not. With my favorite game mode being survival and those bypasses, in my opinion, being way too hard to find, I think this is a pretty neat thing to have. Again, it's one of 14 abilities within one ability, so I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. Life Support Capsule. Follie paints a Life Support Capsule from survival missions. This can be used to restore life support in Kuva survival, Hell Scrub, all the good stuff, and also providing a single health orb. It's got a 3-minute cooldown, and this ability mostly sucks. I wish it gave like teammates within affinity range overguard or something. It can come in handy when your survival party like has a member that leaves and enemy spawns get a little messy to keep life support up, but usually you have enough stocked up by then. This ability is a bit underwhelming in my opinion. You can like hop up on it like so. But like it does abide by your SHADOWGRAPH painting duration, which in my case is about 30 seconds, and it's got a 2-minute cooldown or 3-minute cooldown. So it's just not great in my opinion, and it also can't be converted into a Kuva dispenser either. So it's like fine, but I don't think it's generally useful. Power Cell. Follie paints an excavation power cell. I really wish they added something else to this, making it like a throwable grenade or something, having it recharge shields, something. If you're playing the excavation game mode, which I really hope they modernize soon, this is actually quite strong, 60-second cooldown, which makes it kind of decent, but only in excavation. I think if this ability had like a 30-second cooldown, it'd be really broken in excavation. I'd like it a lot. Ultimately, it's only good in one game mode, and that game mode is a little bit outdated at the moment, unfortunately. It's so niche. Defense Capsule. Follie paints a defense cryopod capsule. This one sounds a bit bummy, but I promise it's not. It's actually like super nice. It's got a high threat level, just like the standard defense little guys do, meaning enemies will focus it instead of you. So this, combined with the Coralizer, combined with the Death Orb, means like you can really do some insane zone control in those defensive game modes. It's got a 60-second cooldown, which means it's got about a net like 30 to 40-second downtime. Not bad at all if you're struggling to keep. You're not, as Follie, you're likely not going to struggle to keep yourself alive, but if there's something else, teammate or objective you're trying to keep alive, this combined with the rest of your SHADOWGRAPH paintings and self-portrait and plein air, pretty solid stuff. And lastly, the Conduit Key. Kind of wish this one did more, but it doesn't. It's just for disruption, and it speeds up disruption quite quickly, but the devs did have this in mind. It's got a 3-minute cooldown, and if there's multiple Follies, they've kind of shared the same fixed semi-random order, which means I believe it's meant to kind of dampen the disruption speedrunning method. Overall, just kind of useless outside of its main game mode. It's kind of similar to the Amphors, very similar to the Power Cells and Life Support. I would describe SHADOWGRAPH as that giant big-ass sword, like for Berserk, that Guts wields, Dragon, whatever it is. Anyway, or a Buster Sword, like Cloud has, as like the barrel, the explosive barrel, and then at the bottom, towards the hilt of the giant-ass sword, it's like there's like a Hello Kitty Swiss Army knife. Usually, you'll find yourself using the sword over and over, but occasionally you'll want to crack open a beer without lobbing off your arm. SHADOWGRAPH is an amazing ability. And I would say that more than half of it absolutely succeeds as parts of an ability, which is really good when there's 14 paintings. How much you would like to get out of SHADOWGRAPH depends on the player and the game mode, but honestly, Explosive Barrel steals so much of the show here from a meta sense, especially in the faster paced game modes, again, meta sense, like Exterminate or Capture. But for game modes like the defenses and the survivals, frequent arc traps, coralizers, death orbs, off cooldown to lockdown areas, universal ammo, Thermion RPG, Lost Spirit, defense capsule, they kind of have like the occasional use cases. Low surge off of cooldown can be, again, kind of potential man, but it's quite fun to have. I like gambling. Heart of the cards, baby. And in my opinion, the rest is just for the mission objectives or is complete fodder. Again, that's just my opinion on SHADOWGRAPH. Use it at your leisure, how you want, as little or as much. If you only use the barrel, I will not judge you. But I do think this ability's got a lot of good things to it. The niche ones are just kind of a bummer to me, but when you do find yourself occasionally in those game modes, it's very nice to have, and I like it that it was thought of. Follie's third ability is Self-Portrait. Follie splashes up an inky clone of herself at a reticle that is stationary, surrounded in ink. While Follie or allies are present in the surrounding ink, they gain an amount of damage reduction. As you can see, it starts at 10% in the upper right-hand corner there. When Follie or allies get kills within the ink expands outwards, and the duration of Self-Portrait is restored by a few seconds, along with the damage reduction increasing up to the maximum strength that you've modded for. That's, again, scaling with power strength, and the range scaling with range. The built-in cap on the DR is 90%, which is achieved at 180% ability strength. I will get some kills here. And as you can see, that amps all the way right up to 90%, and the range becomes absurd. Even if I walk to the corner of this room, I've still got that DR, and if I were an enemy, I would still be ink blotted. This makes enemies super easy to gain energy off of. You can recast it, and it will remember its size as long as you didn't let the ability go off of duration. That's super important. So you want to make sure if it's about to go down, even if you can't get kills, you want to recast it to maintain its high DR and high range. Very important to not let this ability go down. Not that it's a huge pain in the butt to restore, there's no reason to when you can just recast it, and it's got a decent base duration. It can also go past its base duration when you are refunding the duration with kills. So super strong. This is her Helminth ability as well, which you can cough up to other Warframes. It's got a new damage reduction cap of 75%, and no ink blot application. Self-Portrait is honestly way better than I expected. Constantly resummoned, slowing enemies a ton, ink blotting them for easy energy, makes you really hard to kill. It can be used offensively and defensively, and just covers absurd range. Just make sure you properly maintain it, as it becomes pretty weak if you have to ramp it up again. I wouldn't recommend using this as your only means of survivability, especially in content that puts your builds under a little bit more scrutiny, but combine it with Arcing Aegis, well-timed force perspectives, or stacking DR sources, and you can become just truly unkillable with zero effort. All this ability does is really strong, and way stronger than I thought it would be initially. Follie's fourth ability is PLEIN, or PLEIN, I'm not sure. Follie ties balloons to enemies within a distance and within line of sight. With a balloon connected, enemies have their shields and armor removed by a percent, scaling with power strength. Enemies then begin to float helplessly, making this a great additional layer of survivability. Observe, the balloons will pop, dropping enemies. This can be popped by a variety of things, other abilities, allies, weapons, whatever. Enemies fall to the ground, dealing fairly high damage, scaling with enemies' health and distance traveled from the fall, along with AoE damage and spreading more ink blot on landing. Enemies with Overguard aren't sent into the air, but have their standard defenses stripped, which is really good. PLEIN is ultimately fine, I guess. It never really feels like the optimal choice when there's so many broken other options. As you see, pop them more a single target. It will absolutely nuke. I mean, like, if you watch this, even just with a single barrel, and the Ogress, like, it does what you would expect it to do. The barrels pop. It's all amazing. It's very strong. The problem is, barrel does this anyway, and does it better with other abilities. For me, this kind of sets as a precision intensify Helminth slot, but it's not bad. It's not bad at all. It's just that you get a lot less damage against overguarded enemies because they don't fall, they just have their armor stripped. If you're synergizing with arc traps more, I think this ability is much stronger. But like additionally, Tempest Barrage, which is a really strong build, also can full strip, so it's really up to you. This also has a higher energy cost than something like Tempest Barrage or Roar, and for that reason, even though the aesthetic is cool, everything about PLEIN is cool, I like it, it's a very complete ability, it just doesn't tie the kit together as much as I would expect it to, no pun intended, but overall it's great, love the sound design. I will just say that I think Helminth options just make for stronger builds. Firstly, Foley's subsumeability is, of course, self-portrait, which it gives other Warframes. It can be decent DR, but again, we have an adjusted DR cap, and I think it's just less consistent than Null Star or Eclipse. Null Star with Neutron Star gets a lot done. Eclipse is really easy to maintain. It can be fun. The slow is actually good, and if it's a max range frame, like that's kind of their default build, it really isn't bad. It's fun. It's fun, but farming another Foley is not. So it's really up to you. Depends on if you're already just farming Attrimentum for something or whatever. I have a whole video on that. I just uploaded last week. Enjoy. Foley has a lot of great helmet options. They're not 100% needed. This frame does not need it at all, but it does complete the frame incredibly hard. So Breach Surge for spreading damage is always a solid option. Gloom will allow you to slow down the entire map with Inkblot. Also, Gloom kind of has this inky look to it that I really like, and I think that if you're doing a support build, I feel Gloom is the strongest option. You really bring the map to a whole standstill, and because we're basically consistently removing Plein Air, I don't think you should remove any of our other abilities. Because we're consistently removing that fourth ability, we have Precision Intensify, which is good for other options on this list, but Gloom in particular means you're getting that full slow, and it's very, very potent. Larva or any other grouping helmet, pull, airburst, whatever, just for large amounts of grouping into the barrels, because the barrels don't have a scaling range. Super great option in my opinion. Roar, obviously, yeah, okay, free thinker, YouTuber guy, very fun. Listen, it's like Sevogoth. You give me percent health damage, I'm popping Roar on that bad boy, and I'm one-shotting everything. It's just how it works. I don't make the rules. I think the strongest, besides Roar, is Tempest Barrage. The missiles from Tempest Barrage, first of all, when you have like black energy, they look like ink, which looks really cool splashing down. I think it really, really matches the aesthetic in the same way that I think Gloom looks good and Roar is kind of a jump scare on the horror frame. I think all these aesthetics work in my opinion. But Tempest Barrage actually detonates your explosive barrels from SHADOWGRAPH, which means you don't have to build them up yourself. Viral Tempest means you have all of the debuffing you could possibly need through Corrosive and Viral. Easy range. This is, in my opinion, it's Roar and Tempest. It's really a close match in my opinion. It's two fundamentally different playstyles though. One requires a lot more casting. One is a little bit easier to play, but both are very strong. And then like Tesla Nervos with Tesla Bank is fine. Webbed Embrace is probably fine. But really, ultimately, she doesn't need Helminth, and so for that reason, you can really just put on whatever you want. But the builds I use are Roar, Tempest Barrage, Gloom, and a Plein Air build as well. But that was mainly for display. The main one I play is Roar, and the second main one I play is Tempest Barrage. I cover builds in a bit of a unique way here. I'm always studying and trying to teach building properly, because ultimately I just think a lot of the community doesn't really know how to, and that's not their fault. Warframe never teaches you. I'm going to outright give you the builds to use at your convenience, but I'm also going to walk you through some of the process as well and explain my thought process covering survivability, damage, utility, and flex options. In some of these guides, I'll use a variety of builds to really describe what the Warframe is capable of and what playstyles you can pivot around towards. The modding experience for Foley is weirdly fun, despite my earlier complaints in the intro section. Because she doesn't use much damage in terms of modding, you end up with a lot of free room in your arcanes and mod capacity to really just go at it. Additionally, a lot of what you build depends on if you decide to, helm without Plein Air. For Archon Shards, I use these green shards, which are corrosive status, and that just allows us to full strip with Tempest Barrage when I do play that build. Casting speed, honestly, wish I had popped in more of these. I just like having the green ones here, and I wanted to teach about them. After this video, these will probably be replaced by Parkour Velocity or Casting Speed. And then the humble single Equilibrium Purple Shard, I think this is enough. Maybe I'll Tau Forge it. But overall, this with Inkblot just fixes your entire energy economy. It's really, really strong. Let's take a look at the builds and kind of what we have going on here. So I'm showing 3 builds today. I have Inkstorm, which is a Tempest Barrage focused setup. I have Jumpscare, which is a Roar focused setup. And Time Stop, which is a Gloom focused setup. Let's kind of talk about them component by component. The modding experience for Foley is pretty enjoyable, I'd say. There's a lot to do here, a lot of choices to make, and a lot of like flex slots you get. So for survivability, there's 2 methods I go for. For here, Gloom kind of plus Precision Intensify plus Self-Portrait kind of act as their own method of defense, where like the map is so slowed down, but in case something outside of your Gloom range hits you, I do let Aegis sit here. Aegis is going to make Foley basically immortal combined with Self-Portrait. That's the baseline that you'll need. If you need anything else, you could obviously throw it on there, but generally it's going to be strong enough. In Jumpscare here, I use a shield gating setup, which is a little more boring. That uses two pieces of the auger set from Reach and Secrets, along with Brief Respite, so that every time I paint a barrel, because of catalyzing shields bringing my shields down, basically every time I paint a barrel, I am going to be re-shielded up, and this is probably the strongest build I've been able to compose. I sacrificed notice both of these builds, the Tempest Barrage and the Gloom builds, both utilize max range, because I do think for self-portrait, it becomes very broken very fast. And Inkstorm, or Tempest Barrage and Gloom both scale with range quite heavily, while Roar, doesn't really. So I opt for the 190%. So I forego that overextended because I want power strength in my Roar. But I use Cutting Drift, Reach, and Stretch in order to still acquire a bunch of range, so that my self-portrait still maxes out at 38 meters, which is more than respectable. It's able to help my team out a little bit. Jump Scare is my strongest build, definitely. I use Molt Vigor and Molt Augmented. These just basically, I use Hardened Wellspring on the Zeneric Focus School to give myself some energy per second. That kind of will hold my energy over until I get the Loc Surge roll I want. And like I said, Follie doesn't really struggle with energy at all. It's more to kickstart the mission and to give myself a stronger Roar. You could also totally go Matter Eye and then combine even more power strength if you wanted to. But really, when you're using a build like with Roar or with Vile Tempest, it's more about trying to make your other abilities do more damage. Pushing Barrel to 100% max health damage is not difficult. Pushing your Death Orb or an Arc Traps to do a little bit more, that is a little bit more challenging, and that's what such a strong Roar feels necessary here for. Inkstorm and Time Stop are very similar builds, with the core difference being that the Gloom build does utilize Precision Intensify, while that slot is taken by Viral Tempest here. You just don't need that much power strength here. I use Molt Augmented, which is able to push my self-portrait to its max DR, but that's all we really need. All it does is increase the status chance of Viral Tempest, which this will get up to 200% due to Molt Augmented, which is plenty fast, but that will strip target, Tempest Barrage doesn't need to full viral every single time in order to get value. A lot of the value from Tempest Barrage here is due to the fact that it auto-detonates those barrels for you. These are kind of the core concepts. Just if you're using Plein Air, Corrosive Projection is able to bring that threshold down to 160% power strength. Otherwise, it's 200. Make sure you're hitting that 180% for self-portraits, DR. Modding Follie is just really easy. Strongly recommend Primed Flow, as you're going to want to hold on to the energy you're generating. Mecha Set's really strong here, especially with the Tempest Barrage build. Again, Mecha Sets, I'll probably make a video at some point. It's just a broken set if you're using remotely any kind of statuses, which Follie does occasionally use. So yeah, there's a lot going on here. A lot of flex slots. If you wanted to use Natural Talent instead of the casting speed shards, there's just all sorts of options. I really recommend it. I'll go over the shards again real quick. So just stuff for Viral Tempest, or Tempest Barrage, casting speed, which I'll probably add more of, and then single Equilibrium. It does the trick. It's really, really strong. And then real quick, just some synergies that I'd like to note. The Ogress here, this is the build that I said I'd mentioned earlier. This is a bit of a weird niche build. I've got my Riven that has higher multi-shot, higher mag cap, and lower projectile speed with heavy caliber, almost maxed, which allows this to disperse Nightwatch Napalm rockets with Prime Firestorm very, very, very crazily everywhere. And maybe I would switch this with a standard standard split chamber. I'm not really sure yet, just because this thing itself doesn't get kills. But basically this just primes a bit of viral, does a bit of heat. But the main goal is just to spread as much napalm everywhere so that I can detonate my barrels easily. The Enkhouse, which is her signature weapon, is actually really strong. I think it struggles in AoE environments, but in terms of doing an execute, if you are a new player and you can get your hands on Follie in the Enkhouse, you've got yourself a very broken setup. Grab Roar from the HELMINTH, from the Jackal fight, and you are all good. I use the Grimoire here because this is the kind of painter frame, so giving her a sketchbook makes a lot of sense to me. Also, tome mods means you can opt for strength or energy here. Fortifier will also allow you to, in my case, fire the Ogress at your feet, because I'm not a believer in primed sure-footed. Give yourself a little bit of overguard with Fortifier there. And the Path Assist here, I just think looks super cool. It can help detonate the barrels. It makes the little maggots, which is super cool. And they have kind of an ink-like effect when they're created and destroyed. And the aura on here looks really cool. Grab the Praetos, grab the Okina, whatever you decide. Focus Schools. absolutely up to you. To me, the book makes a lot of aesthetic sense, so I go for that. But really, whatever you want to do here, for me, she just needs energy. As long as she has energy with a roar build, you can one-shot entire rooms with little to no effort. But if you want to amp that roar, Matter Eye could be good. Yunaru, so you don't knock yourself on your ass. So on and so forth. SHADOWGRAPH, here are my paintings. You know, very big grandma got hit by a bazooka, unfortunately. Some of these were just so good from the devs that I just ended up modifying them a bit. Slot machine Loke Surge, change the colors on the launch pad, really boring basic stuff. But overall, one of the most fun abilities, if you don't really understand how it works, basically you pick these layers, up to 16 of them, apply a color to them, and it's honestly a really, really fun system. And again, they tried to do something very creative with Follie, and so that's why I'm okay with her broken tier strength. She is super fun, has a lot going on, but ultimately you don't have to do much to get really insane output from her, which I have mixed feelings about. Another quick note, if you were opting to use that Tempest Barrage setup that I mentioned, you can actually kind of forego weapons entirely and swap to either the Shade or Invis Kurao, which I think is the harass. Yeah. And my only issue with that is that Follie, those entities require an enemy near to provide the stealth, and so you kind of end up with like pretty inconsistent stealth, but like that's not really a big deal because you have forced perspective to keep yourself alive. I just find those Invis caster setups to be not my playstyle, but if that's something that's appealing to you, you should absolutely give it a try. I think it's super fun, but because you're not firing a weapon, you are able to stay a fully Invis caster, similar to like the Protea build or other frames that can kind of do full stealth builds. So yeah, super strong with the Tempest Barrage because you don't need a weapon to fire and to detonate those barrels. Really strong build, but just not my style, but give it a try. I think it's fun. For my gameplay section, I kind of split it up into two parts, which are core gameplay and gameplay considerations. Core gameplay refers to the parts of gameplay I think are fairly basic, important, and you shouldn't stray from too much. Apply the concepts as you wish. Of course, I can't tell you what to do. I'm not your dad. But, you know, these are like pretty important things you need to do in order to get outcome out of X-Frame. And gameplay considerations refer to my more personal options, the various ways I attempt to get more value out of the Warframe, have more fun with the Warframe, whether that's damage, utility, or just something that I think is more enjoyable. So we're going to head into Circulus. One thing I kind of forgot to mention, companions, whatever you want. For the Roar build, I think that Panzer Vulpaphyla for the Viral is really good, but if you're using like Viral Tempest, Tempest Barrage or whatever, then like the Mecha set might be a little bit better, so Mecha Companion. Sentinel, literally whatever you want to use. Again, a lot of Follie's kit is kind of taken over by the barrel combo, so whatever benefits that the most, or benefits your survivability, is a great choice. So for the rev up here, we're just going to cast... we'll probably stick with barrel first, actually. We're gonna get this barrel out, kill these enemies real easy, get our Zeneric running, get our Molt Vigor proc ready, and with the Hardened Wellspring, I do think Matter Eye is a little bit better for the casting speed and strength, but I just don't like getting shafted in the early, like, minute, right? Because, you can run out of energy, and then it's kind of hard to get going. So Health Orbs increase max health for 25 for the rest of the mission. That's a pretty good permanent one. I like that one a lot. So now all we kind of do is run through. We've revved up with Roar. We've got our Loke Surge running. And now our goal is to kind of apply Ink Blot in order to get those health orbs. So we put our self-portrait down. Remember that you can kind of place the self-portrait wherever you want. It follows your cursor. So place it in an area that will actually get kills. As you see, the combo I just did there is the 2-1 combo, which is the barrel into force perspective. The damage from force perspective detonates the barrel. And makes it really easy. So here I'm going to apply Ink Blot to all these enemies. Again, the force perspective does apply it, but sometimes you kill the enemy too quick, it feels like, and they don't get the Ink Blot, which means you're not going to get the Health Orb, which is not good, because we want the Health Orb for the duration that we have that Loke Surge in order to gain some max health. Not saying that the max health is going to help you a ton in most situations, but like this does apply to your teammates within affinity range when you pop it, and they could definitely benefit from it. So here, like, my energy is running dry. So again, I like having Zeneric for consistency's sake, but generally speaking, with KPM, it's going to be easy enough to maintain that. So we're going to like kind of pick a room, get the self-portrait down, and we have a panic button in the form of our 1, but do note that because we have this pretty intense shield gating setup, that it's just not going to be nearly as necessary. So here we'll go for the Molt Vigor proc again, just like that. And yeah, it's pretty simple. Basically just area denial. The area denial will be a lot more kind of prevalent when it comes to the range build, which is the Gloom and the Tempest Barrage. This build is a little bit more mobile. As you can see, I'm just detonating my barrels with Nightwatch Napalm. It's super easy, but I can also do the 2-1 combo if I elect to. Both are very strong. Just, you know, it's really up to preference. I think that if you're going to do the 2-1 combo in a different build, though, it's a little bit annoying. There's a lot more inputs involved. Note that the invulnerability that lasts after Force Perspective can let you shoot like explosive weapons at your feet like that, which means you can kind of put in the combo funky. Like you can do the rocket and into the 1, into the 2, and it'll work just totally fine. This kit works really... This particular loadout. The kit is quite seamless, but I genuinely think that my loadout is like one of the best feeling I've played with this. Obviously, like, Tempest Barrage is super easy to execute as well. One of the kind of main things you gotta remember is that, like, you can move pretty stupidly fast, and again, I do think Madurai is moderately better than Xenoric here, just because casting speed gets so much done with Force Perspective. It makes it feel, like, so disgusting, and if you really are using that 2-1 combo almost exclusively to detonate those barrels reliably, then I would have to definitely recommend that you use Madurai, and especially if you don't have the Ogress, right? Some players just don't have that or don't prefer it. They don't like AoE weapons, totally valid. In that case, the 2-1 combo is very reliable, but really any mix of M1 with the Ogress, 2 and 1 will get like any job done. The main choices you kind of have to make are what I already discussed, which are like, okay, how do you plan on detonating your barrels, right? But the other choice, which I also guess I talked about earlier, is how much of SHADOWGRAPH do you actually want to use? Follie's kit, even PLEIN Air when you have it equipped, or PLEIN Air, whatever. Oh, 1 second, we have an Acolyte feature. So let me just grab the Thermion RPG, place some barrels down, maybe an Arc Trap, and just pop them real easy, right in the mouth. Thermion RPG does a great job with dealing with those kind of targets. Our abilities, quite frankly, do a decent job as well. And also, remember, yeah, cast Arc Trap for Archon Stretch procs if you want as well. That can be useful. But hello? Per our last discussion, basically, the other choice to kind of make is how much of SHADOWGRAPH do you actually want to use? I know the joke is that like Warframe players don't enjoy pressing buttons. And if that's the case, then you really can just stick with using the barrel over and over. But really, it's up to you. Like, I've placed a couple Death Orbs, placed a couple Coralizers. I would say in a game mode like Survival, you really don't have to use much of the rest of SHADOWGRAPH. In defensive game modes, Interception, Mobile Defense, I do think the Coralizer and the Death Orb really do have a place, especially if you can, again, use buffs and debuffs. Because, remember, the buffs and debuffs from, like, Viral Tempest or from Roar, they don't just buff the barrel. Even though it kind of, I mean, with how much I use the barrel, it might seem that way. The truth of the matter is that it buffs the damage, the percent health damage of your Coralizer, of your Orb, of your Arc Traps. Which means that those can also become very strong tools in your kit as well. Whoops, I just gave my, oh my god, I pressed too many buttons. There we go. Warframe players, am I right? Let me get rid of these guys here. And yeah, I mean, that's really all there is to it. I think that this is a very simple kit to execute. You can kind of make it as quote-unquote complex as you want in terms of using all 14 parts of SHADOWGRAPH. I'm just going to do a little display because I really do think that Force Perspective is kind of one of the most disgusting movement abilities they've added in some time. And again, if you have Madurai or Casting Speed Shards, you can make it even more disgusting and move even faster. The ability to kind of teleport into thin air is really funny. Excellent overshot. I don't know, we're good. So yeah, like that's why I don't really opt for that's why I don't really opt for parkour velocity on Follie, because casting speed gets you like a proportionate amount of movement speed, while casting speed also helps you with other things. That's why I don't go for the shards, even though I'm a true believer in the government-mandated parkour velocity shard. I just think casting speed here is way more valuable. Helps with your combat, helps with your movement. It just does everything really well for you. And that's basically the gameplay. We're going to get onto my little summary yapping, as if I haven't been running my mouth enough already, and wrap this video up. Thank you guys if you've stayed this long. Love you lots. Talk to you soon. So to kind of wrap Follie up here in the summary section, this frame is very, very disgustingly strong in almost every aspect of Warframe. I think she's very fun to play. I think her kit is quite complete. There's just a lot of, no pun intended, there's a lot of bloat here. And I'm all for it, baby. I'm all for it. Get me in there. But what I'm saying is there's a lot to SHADOWGRAPH that just isn't really needed. Not because SHADOWGRAPH is poorly designed, but because Beryl is so broken. If I kind of had my way with this kit, what I would do is I would keep Beryl maybe as strong, maybe make it a little bit stronger, but give it a cooldown, and then have that cooldown reduced by executing other paintings. I just wish SHADOWGRAPH was a more intricate ability. I know it's not really Warframe's like MO, right, when it comes to building these kits, but personally with an ability as strong as Beryl, I would have changed it up a little bit to make it a little bit more unique. But overall, I mean, this kit feels really fun to play. It's just like, it feels, half of it feels optional, and obviously again, SHADOWGRAPH, to an extent, some of those abilities are just straight up not useful in certain game modes, right? Like, you know, the Disruption Key, the Amphors, stuff like that. And having it available to you is great. I love the way, but really, I love the way this frame looks, plays, everything is great. I wish the event and the farm of her was better by a lot. But overall, this kit feels pretty cohesive, which I really, really didn't expect. Force Perspective has got to be one of my new favorite abilities in the game. I wish I could give it to other frames. It is so fun. Really snappy invuln, good animation time with a little bit of casting speed. And again, can't really stress enough that casting speed is super important on this frame. Mainly for Force Perspective, but for a lot of other things she has going on. I'm talking like, you can put natural talent. I don't know if casting speed has a cap, but I'm talking like natural talent, shards, Matter Eye, however you elect to get it. I think that Force Perspective is absolutely amazing and a whole lot of fun, both for dealing your damage out with the barrels and for moving around the map unreasonably fast. Self-portrait is super fun. I love the inky effect. I love the way it covers the map. Really, really strong distance, really, really strong energy gen, and that's energy gen for your whole team. I think that's really underrated. It's DR, it's energy gen. I think that in the majority of Follie builds, you should have max range. I know my Roar build doesn't have max range, but honestly, that Roar build is just as good. You sacrifice a little bit of damage for a whole lot of utility, and again, Warframe is a game where you're dealing, trying to deal 100 or 102 damage on an enemy that has 100 HP, right? And that's kind of what I'm getting at. Like with Roar, even in the context of using overextended, Roar still pushes barrels over to their 100% HP kill threshold very easily. You know, reduced defenses, complementing the Ogress, all that stuff. I just think Self-Portrait with max range, PLEIN with max range, really, really, really good. I wish this ability tied the kit together. Again, no pun intended. I just think PLEIN is a little bit, it's cool, but the damage is not. I wish it was a little bit more focused on its supportive capabilities, because the damage is just all in SHADOWGRAPH. It's all in the barrel. So if PLEIN was given like maybe damage vulnerability or something else, I guess primarily more damage vulnerability aside from the defense reduction, I know that'd be really, really broken. Or maybe have a painting that gives damage vulnerability. Just, I don't, quite frankly, I had like a hot takes video I made a while back. I don't really care for the HELMINTH system in modern day. Modern Warframes are just designed much better. And so I kind of wish that I could just play full vanilla Follie. But in this case, Roar, again, just kind of dominates, and it feels mandatory in a lot of builds. Although I do think Tempest Barrage, again, equally strong, two different playstyles. This frame is amazing. Feels amazing. Looks amazing. I really do like Follie a lot, and hopefully you guys learned how to play her through this video. If you have any questions, any thoughts, literally anything you want to express, video ideas, whatever, I'm more than happy to help always. Hopefully you guys are having a great day or night, whatever you got going on. Love you guys a whole lot, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.